Hello everybody, that is here. I would like to make a quick introduction to the video you're about to watch, which is a collection of my work on migrating my personal computer from CaseLab S8 case to Alphacool Skeleton Pro case, as you see right there. Also on the way I changed my GPU, which was 3080 originally, but I have 4090 that I use for GPU block testing throughout the summer, and now I put it in my system, so I'm done with that department. So why I would like to make this introduction is because it's not like continuous story. When I have some idea, I would like, lay it up it's a nice manner. It's more of a random collection of videos that okay, I did this, I try this doesn't work, so this now, things like this. So I think it will be interesting for a few categories of people. One category, if anybody like to see how grass grow, that's a perfect one. So this will be a slow grass growing. Second, I think this video will be interesting for anybody who kind of beginner and just getting into water cooling scene. And one of the biggest misconceptions of new builders is they usually like coming to our store and say, oh, okay, what parts I need to buy to complete the system. And while I built something different, so I have more challenges than usual, but it also shows that typically beginning of the process is slightly different from the end of the process, and number of parts and things like this typically changed, even for standardized type of the builds. So I would like to demonstrate how it works in practice, and you can see, so you can have a proper expectation that the creative process is not always straightforward. It's a little bit going this direction and that direction and things like this. So I hope you will enjoy this build log. I will put some timestamps, so if you're interested in some specific items that I was working on or struggling with, so you can jump. Otherwise, it's about 30 minutes of my work that shows about 10 days of actual work. So I tried to compress it as much as I could. So enjoy the video, and we'll talk to you a little bit later at the end. Hello everybody, that is here. Very happy to see all of you on the other side of the screen. I decided to update my personal computer with a skeleton case I got from Alphacool, and I'm going to migrate all my existing parts from CaseLab's S8, I already dismantled over there, to this new case and see if I made it to my liking, basically. There's a few challenges with this particular case because it has a specific layout which doesn't work for me, but we'll see how it goes. If you saw my previous video about unboxing skeleton case, you would remember that it has basically a motherboard tray on one side and vertical GPU mount on the front, which is very traditional standard type of setup. It's all made for computer located on the right side of the user. So then you see your GPU, you see your motherboard and everything. So in my particular case, because how is my desk set up at the home office, the computer on left side of me. So if I'll do that, I will be facing basically in my face. What I'll get is back side of the motherboard tray. Somehow behind will be GPU, and that's basically it. So what I decided to do is to see if there is even possible to make a reverse type of the build. So essentially I put my GPU tray, reverse it, and put it on all the way to the top of the case. And it happens that I have barely enough space to put my Asus Maximus Hero board right under it. So the idea, theoretically, if I will be able to pull it off, then I'll have showcasing of my GPU, and I have my motherboard below it with a CPU block. This already created some problems that I have to address. Originally, I have this bracket for PSU that is bolted right here, and there's no way to move it anywhere because of how the case is done. But you may see or not, but it's already overlapping with input-output ports on the back of the motherboard. So it's not possible. Even if somehow I will try to see if I can raise this mounting and kind of try to move it on the side, it's still overlapping. So this is not the way how you do it. Second option, I actually can move it to the front, but I don't think it's a good idea. Even if I will try to put the bracket like this, no, actually it's like this, on the top, it's significantly overlapping GPU part as well. So it definitely doesn't work. And my only option, as I said, is try to put it in a vertical manner. Naturally, not many people using 525 devices, but I still do. So there's another problem that I have to deal with. There's no mounting whatsoever available from this particular case, and there are no brackets, nothing, so I need to figure out something else. I noticed that if I try to use the bracket from power supply and I'll cut a little bit of material around, I still can open doors for my hard drives. So theoretically it's possible to have it somehow mounted in the front of the case. Also, I mentioned many times that I'm not big fan of distribution plates. I would rather use like tubular reservoir, so to speak. But in this particular situation, this case coming with distribution plate and reservoir pump combo, basically specifically made for this case, and it's very like really nice shape, fits it well. Maybe I give it a shot and I build one time a computer that is using distribution plate. I haven't decided hard tubes or soft tubes yet, because I don't know how my electronic components will be located. So basically there's a few options that I'm still investigating. Another challenge, if you will, for this particular setup that I made a contraption at this point. Basically it's not enough space for radiator and fan, so they go above the case, kind of sticking out. It doesn't bother me specifically, but it's another constraint on the spacing. I have a little update that's worth talking about. So I found a way to save some of my storage cages, and not as in ugly ways that I showed you just before I was filming. So I figured out that I can put a few of my cages and also a cage for SSDs, so I can have two SSDs, 2 hard drives on the bottom, and it fits perfectly under the motherboard. The only problem initially that I got run into, that I have this post that originally was approximately in this position, and it was basically used to have a clips on both sides, and motherboard tray was attached to it. But because motherboard travel on other side of the case, I basically didn't need it. So I tried first to move this post right here, but as you can see, it wasn't enough clearance for 2 cages. So I thought maybe use one, but finally I decided that maybe I can remove this post, because I don't think it's create any serious support structure. That should be not a problem at all. With triple radiator with 2 fans, not such a big deal, so I don't think that anything will happen. And I start working on removing it. Well, that wasn't an easy task. I can tell you that if you decide to move or reconfigure your skeleton case, it's not the best idea, because there's 2 problems. First problem is that for whatever reason Alphacool decide to put inside of the mounting that holds those carbon tubes some sort of sticky tape glue. So disassemble of the case, it's really hard. So you literally need to rip it apart and breaking all that sticky tape. So it's basically glue, not like shut off completely, but it wasn't easy. And you have all this nasty stuff all over the place. So this is one problem. Second problem is that it's not related to disassembly, but partially related to disassembly. I would like to notice that you should be extremely careful dealing with any brackets that attach to this carbon tubes, because they scratched very easily. I don't know, is it property of the carbon itself or just because those brackets sharp. So if you scratch it, you have a like gray line which is very visible and not very nice. When I was moving the post to this position just to see if I can put two cages in, I actually scratched this post pretty badly, so I have to turn it and it will be not visible. But anyway, so I have a lot of places now which get scratches, and I barely work on this case for a couple days. So be super careful, don't force any mounting along those posts. Make sure you unscrew all screws enough so it can be moved easily. Don't try to ruin it. Well, here you go, some additional progress. I played a little bit with different ways to mount power supply. Theoretically, I can actually mount it horizontally somewhere in that area, but the problem is that this razor cable, it's not very bendable, and power supply will be basically almost flush with a vertical GPU mount. So this doesn't work, so I opted to vertical mount in the middle so it doesn't obstruct with a graphical card, and also doesn't obstruct area with my CPU, because I also have some tubing going on here. So the only way to mount it in the middle basically. One thing I missed, also it doesn't bother me too much, but nevertheless, when I reversed position for the GPU, it's actually facing other direction with the acrylic portion of it. So even if I will start doing any sort of lighting on it, it will be more like ambient light towards the wall rather than actually I would see anything. Well, it doesn't bother me too much because essentially it's the same what I had before. So I was looking at the back plate before, and now I also will be looking at the back plate. I also ran out of any sort of mounting brackets because I used a bunch of them for my hard drive cages. I think that a good idea to suggest for Alphacool to start selling some additional brackets if somebody wants to do any modification instead of doing predefined configurations that's suggesting. Already I spent some time trying different variations, and I come up with solutions that I will try to implement and see how it goes. So essentially I took some of the brackets from my hardware contraption mount so I can put mounting for radiators. I feel that I would like to use two cross-flow radiators, triple on front, triple on top, and try to make a one continuous loop. And the way how I would like to do it is basically I remove the pump here so I can see where the actually in and out is coming. So this is big reservoir is a feeding pump, so right there, and the exit is to this port or any of those three actually. So what I'm thinking to get connection from the outlet of the pump towards inlet for the CPU right there. From here I actually go behind the PSU and will feed to crossflow radiator so I can go all the way through. and from that side I actually can go to the port for the inlet for my GPU, and that allows me to go out. Here I'm not quite sure, I kind of have more ports than I need, so maybe I will not use them at all, or I'm thinking maybe to kind of connect those two directly, so then I can go here, connection, and I can return back to my radiator, not back, I can go to my front radiator, which will be returning liquid back to big reservoir on the bottom, and here we'll have a splitter for the draining. That's how I clean my rods, never fails me. The radiator sometimes a little bit resonating, and when it sits next to your ears it quite often produces additional noise that you don't like, and it's usually quite unpleasant. So I'll put a gasket on. Well, as we have fins exposed on top of the case, eventually something will drop and bend them, so I need some sort of protection. Not very popular thing lately, nobody uses grills anymore, but there's a few options. Could be honeycomb grill or this old school wire one. I think wire doesn't work because all build is kind of very squarish, and even carbon print is kind of all angled, so this probably will be better. This small upgrade I was saving for myself. This is a black chromated brackets for Heatkiller. This part is not available any longer because it was discontinued for the reason that it's environmentally very bad to make chromated steel. So, and I kept a couple in my own stash. Now I have a black on black, and that's how it looks inside. I'm not installing it yet because I'm not sure if I want inlet on the bottom or I want inlet on the top. First connection is in, so we have a pump pumping into this section, so I can use any of those three ports. I chose the lower one because when you go into drain it will be uphill battle even if you tilt the case, so this is better. Also, when I fill the system, this will be air bubbles that I need to deal with, but it's one-time deal kind of thing. I chose initially between ZMT and Alphacool tubing. As you see, ZMT kind of dull color and also give a little bit of grayish tint, if you will. Alhacool more shiny, but it's pure black, and it fits the rest of the black parts much nicer than EK. So EK is out, and we're going with Alhacool tubing moving forward. One little note about mounting crossflow radiators on those mounts that coming with the case. The port is very close to the edge of this plate, and if you put any sort of fitting here, this most likely it will be interfere. And you can see that I even put like tubing, which is much more narrow than regular fitting, and you see like the edge is scratching it, so it's, and you see the fitting is actually under this plate. So you need either adapters that like 45 degree or something that goes away, or very narrow extension that goes above this level. If you have a regular radiator, or maybe that's the right way to show it, here you go. So you can see that going up, this even bigger problem. When you go down, it doesn't matter. So you might need manually cut those plates if you will experience similar situation for whatever reason you have a configuration like that. So keep that in mind. Another thing that this PCB with PCI X razor cable bending pretty severely when 2 kilogram block is installed on it. So actually I'm going to see if I maybe put some sort of piece of plastic or something like a support in the middle, and that will prevent this part bending down. Small element, as I put GPU bracket really up, there nowhere to connect mounting bracket for the top portion of this bracket. So have to go with a little cheating. Putting some point under the bracket definitely helped. So I see it's pretty straight right now. I think it's not a bad thing to have it this way. Leak test is much easier to do if you do it in sections. It's a little bit messy here to understand, but I explain you. So you see I disconnected GPU. So the only loop I'm testing right now is the reservoir itself. Connected this this radiator that connected to this reservoir, and that's it. So I make sure that pump installation is correct. There are no leaks in the reservoir itself and no leaks in the radiator. So when this is done, I can test, for example, GPU and top radiator separately, or I can start adding more components, and if anything goes wrong, I know that the problem is that particular section. So far everything looks good for reservoir and radiator, so I can continue to go up. Don't expect any problems, but sometimes you just simply forget one stop plug to tighten completely, and that's creates you problems. And to illustrate my point, I connected GPU, so now this GPU is part of the loop, as well as this radiator, and I still have CPU disconnected. So everything looks good, so I can make final connection to CPU, those two quick disconnects, and it should be good to go for the initial fill up and see how things works. And I want to make sure that all electronics in a good condition before I'll drain it and see what I need to do with cables and stuff like this to make it nice. Okay guys, I would like to give you overlook of the loop that I completed. I end up basically not really using distribution plates. I essentially use it as a flat reservoir. I have liquid in and liquid out with pump working inside of it. Everything else is not really used. Could be triggering for some people, but to be honest, I never was a big fan of distribution plates. It's just a maze of the tubing that reduce flow rate and not necessarily look good. If you do hard tubing, a little bit better, but I don't. So what's the point? So big chunk of this distribution plate will be not used as intended, and my configuration different anyway, so nothing aligned together. So what we do here, we have a pump that pumping in this particular section, and it goes in a small loop around memory modules, in inlet for my Heatkiller block, and from Heatkiller block goes all the way up to cross-flow radiator, which naturally goes through entire length of radiator, and we're exiting on the other side. You can see that here was managed to connect it to the bottom port, although there was a little bit problem with this plate interfering with the, and actually squishing tubing a little bit. And here I couldn't even install it. It's just sticking too much. I didn't want to cut this plate because maybe I can use it for something else and it will be ugly. So I opted for using side port. Luckily Alphacool have 3 ports on each side, so you can be
not really restricted with any obstacles like this. And here we go into my inlet for the Heatkiller GPU block, exiting to another crossflow radiator, the thin one. Why I use a thin one is because I don't want to obstruct this reservoir, so otherwise it will be sticking too much. And naturally going through entire radiator and exiting back to reservoir, and loop is complete. A draining point maybe need a little bit explanation. I will reposition my camera and show you, because otherwise I don't think you can see what's going on here. Essentially we have a draining port on the reservoir itself. It's right here, so you can see I have a 90-degree and bits power draining fitting right there. But coming from this radiator, initially I thought to split and share this port, but essentially I decided to go into the body itself. Why? Because if you would like to fill your reservoir, all bubbles will be here in this section and will be fed directly to the pump, which is not optimal. You will bleed forever. If bubbles goes here, then they bubble up and will not sucked by pump as much. So, but this design create kind of death zone, because you can't really bleed it properly. So here will be always trapped liquid. So when you need to do complete maintenance and get rid of entire liquid, when you open this port, everything will be drained nicely, with exception of this little section. And to get rid of liquid in this section, you have this secondary draining port that normally maybe you not necessarily will be using every time, because if you want to change liquid, you can drain as much and dilute it with flash and you still go. But nevertheless, to be like perfect, we needed 2 drain ports in this particular situation. I have about 2.5 liters here. Alrighty, so I have my contraption. So this is out, goes to CPU block, goes through entire the system, and will be taken out from here. Hopefully it works. Alrighty, moment of truth. Let's see how this stuff works and if it's worth it. You probably need to open reservoir if I want to have more liquid in it. Okay. Well, I might need manually add it, because I think that's as much as that thing is pushing in. No, let's keep going. Wow! This is the fastest ever fill up I ever had. Naturally, this is not a cheap device, not as expensive as AK. AK I think wanted like gazillion bucks, so this is a couple hundred if I remember correctly. Yeah, this is crazy. Very nice. I can top up with this myself later. The benefit of this thingy is also has a built-in filter. So whatever things still left in a loop will be filtered out, which is a good thing to have. One thing I would like to remind you is that ZMT tubing, or rubber tubing specifically, they have a nasty black pieces of rubber inside, like a dust rubber. This stuff can clog your blocks shut, like literally. You have like no flow at all. So make sure you wash all your tubes. I did wash every single part of the tube I used. Alrighty, it works well. I'll leave it for now. And my dog is demanding going for a walk, so that's what I will do right now.
Don't see anything on the screen.
Well, I have a SATA cable popped out of my SSD, but other than that, after rebooting, it just worked. So maybe I'll play with it for a little bit to see there are no crashes or anything like that, and after that we'll continue with the cable installations, and also all this SSD business need to be put nicely, not just hanging on the wires.
Welcome back. Hopefully you survived through the 30 minutes of my random clips, or at least watch parts of it. Why I would like to make this conclusion is because that wasn't the end of my build actually, for the reasons of because I actually wanted to make sure that the razor cable doesn't give me any troubles, that I don't create any random crashes. So I completed the system and ran it for 3 or 4 days and make sure that everything is just perfect, and it was fine. So I accepted it, that I'm going to use a system with a razor cable, at least for now. And I also added additional tricks because I figured out that a few things is not completely to my liking and I want to do additional changes. So first change that I did, I added Flowmeter from Aquacomputer, high flow next Flowmeter. And this is the reason why I wanted it, because first of all I want to see the flow rates I'm getting. Second, I want to play with some additional features that Flowmeter is offering, like quality of water, which is create a lot of controversy with my clients. So I want to have first-hand experience on that, and also it's second probe for the temperature. On top of that, I also try to play with ASUS, how's it called, Crate or something, some ASUS software that actually allows you to control a variety of things, including profile for the fans. I realize that it's really not the best software you can have, and I decided to converge all controls of my water cooling setup into Computer Aquasuite. For that reason, I added additional components. I put Quadro controller, which is controlling my fans, and I set up a set of profiles, so depending on the temperature my fans is raving up. So what you can hear right now, my pump 20% and my fans probably about, I don't even know, like 300 RPM out instead of 2000 RPM. And the only situation when it's actually going up, it's when I game a little bit. Even when I make a video for a few minutes, it's not long enough for the system to warm up and it doesn't kick in. So I got a silence part of my build addressed. So another thing that I did, I tried to figure out all the lighting effect. Fortunately, there's no perfect integration between Corsair memory and, let's say, ASUS. So you need two pieces of software. They keep conflicting, give me trouble. So I kind of put it a nice way right now for this video. I probably will just delete all that crap, and I don't care. I just will mask this rainbow wave and that's it. So I'm not going to play with all this RGB nonsense any longer, it's only kind of for show. Also I will keep like green lights throughout the system and also in my GPU that you can see actually shining other direction. So that's two changes that I did, and I also was thinking maybe, just maybe, I might reroute my tube routing in a way of I'm actually going in reservoir at the very bottom, so the tall portion of the liquid in my reservoir doesn't really mixing well. So I'm thinking that I can actually go and enter reservoir on top, so it will give a little bit more proper mixing inside of the reservoir itself, because over the time it might start creating some residues that will stick to the glass, and so it will be not visually pleasing. So it may be not as pretty, but it's just a better design. So there's a couple changes that I might implement on top of everything. Other than that, I'm personally very pleased with what I got. Visuals for my liking perfect. Performance pretty good so far as well. The only problem I personally have with this build that my 4090 a little bit whiny. So when I game or when I do video, it's actually have a significant coil whine. But you know what you can do. When it's sitting idle, it's fine. It's only when under heavy load that it's time buzzing. So I don't see any way to improve it. It's not something that future will address under warranty or anything like this. It's just a lottery that you get. Other than that, that's the end of the series. I hope you enjoy it. Anybody who decide to go with this particular case, I think it's quite interesting one, because lately we have predefined configurations which give you very little chance of going through any kind of changes, so it's really hard to change. This one I completely redid what it's supposed to be, and it wasn't that hard. It was a little bit hard because I didn't have additional spare parts, but overall it wasn't too hard, and I was able to build exactly what I actually wanted, including all parts, even some old hard drives that not even supposed to be here. So pretty fun case. Price bites hard, but if you can afford it, why not? Thank you for watching again. I'll see you next video.